All right, welcome back. We are game 3004 in the winter 2021 semester, and it is week 10, part one of our broadcast. We're talking today about, we're doing a project update. So we're sitting at week 10. This week, we're introducing, at least in the PowerPoint, we're introducing things like VFX and other things, particle effects. Last week we talked about scriptable objects. It's like we're a week behind. But we'll be doing scriptable objects and saving and loading this week. And I'll talk about how you can do that on mobile, which is the challenge, right? And last week, I should say last week, not lat week. Last week we did this. We converted our project to mobile, and your third playable release was due Sunday with your third peer review. So I know there's some people that, for whatever reason, they handed it in late. That's fine. This week, what we're doing is, from a project components perspective, you have your weekly report that's due Friday. Please don't forget to do that. And your alpha release, which is next week, Sunday. So that's when it's due. Again, if you look at this, it's not this week, Sunday, but next week, Sunday. And Salik was very kind and patient with me. And he told me, Tom, it's closed. You can't see it. And somehow, I don't know why, but it wasn't activated. So it's activated now. You should be able to see the details for your release. And I think, like we said, it's pretty simple. The majority of what I'm looking for is convert everything to mobile. Make sure that it works properly on the mobile space. Change your mobile input and all that kind of stuff is what we talked about last time. So that is where we're sitting at from a release perspective. This week in lab, we're going to be doing loading and saving game data with scriptable objects. We're going to talk about that. I didn't have time to hit the visual effects graph or VFX graph in Unity. If I did, then we would make some simple stuff. I don't think I'm going to get there this week as well. And I left the scriptable objects information here for you guys that we're going to be using for later on. So that's something that we're looking at. New stuff is VFX graph. And visual effects graph is something that I want to talk about with you guys. It's something that we can use in Unity to replace the regular built-in particle system. It even works on mobile with certain provisos. Remember that the mobile, you're using a mobile GPU, a discrete unit. It's not the same as using things on a machine. So we can use these visual effects graph and even particle systems sparingly on mobile. Some of it won't work, and one of the things that you have to do with mobile in order for you to use visual effects graph is for you to convert your project to a universal, using the universal render pipeline, the URP, as opposed to using the regular 3D graphics pipeline. So that's something that we have to think about, and there's advantages and disadvantages to this. Advantages wise, you get different graphic settings and that kind of thing. Disadvantages, it's heavier on memory usage and power and heat. Those are the things that happens with this stuff with mobile. On a regular machine, if you were doing it on desktop, it'd be perfect. You would have no issues with it. But on mobile, you have restrictions, and so that's what it does. So one of the things it does is the scriptable pipeline that it uses. It uses compute shaders, and when we compare things like how we run particle effects and particle systems on the CPU and what they look like compared to the GPU, and then what you're going to see is that, for example, on the CPU, it can probably run thousands of particles with some kind of performance, right? And the simulation is pretty simple, right? We use, kind of the underlying physics system. But on the GPU with the visual effects graph, we can go to millions of particles. Why? Because we're using the thousands of processors equivalent or cores that are inside of the GPU, right? As opposed to, maybe a few cores that are sitting in your CPU. Even if you have 12 cores or 16 cores or 64 cores, it's still not fast enough to do all the complicated calculations that you'd have to do for more complex visual effects. All right, so that's how it works. One of the things that you need to do is you need to include visual effects graph, and the only way that you can install visual effects graph is if you have, first of all, it has to be a kind of a recent version of Unity. and you must include the URP or the HDRP. So you have to use one of those things. If you don't, then it won't work. It won't support Vfx Graph because it uses deferred rendering and post-processing. So that's something that you need to think about as well. And what you do, you start with a graphic asset. So the graphic asset itself is a brand new asset. It's not just something that is you add as an example to a to a scene, not like particle systems as an example. And then what you have is you have a much more complicated setup that looks like this. And what you're looking at is the visual effect graph window. I'm going to scroll in here so you can see it in kind of in better clarity. What you're looking at is some kind of spawning node. This is what it looks like when you spawn this out. Then there's some kind of particle. So this is the particle system. And what you can do is you can change things by adding additional nodes here in the blackboard, right? Things like the kind of gradient and color. You can put it, push it into the color node, similar to what we would do if we were programming in Blender with shaders. And shader graph is very similar to this as well. Shader graph and Vfx Graph uses a graph-based node visual language. And we talked about this, I guess, many times. Is the future of gaming non-programming or visual programming, right? And I think it is, guys. I know that's sad for some people. They're like, wait, what? We're not going to program anymore? It's not that. It's just that there's going to be more call for this kind of coding where you use some kind of visual coding to create your, your code structure. And you don't have to be a programmer to do it. You can be an artist. You can, as long as you understand how these code blocks kind of link together, and if you can be creative, you can come up with some really cool effects with no code or low code. And I think that's where this is going. Could Unity have offered this in a visual, kind of a non-visual programming option? Yes, and you could do it in Unity as well by using the GPU. But the amount of code blocks that you're going to have to use compared to using something visual like this is like crazy. It's nuts, right? It's way more difficult than just using something that's visual that you can link together. So again, you have something like a spawn. You spawn a particle. You initialize the particle with maybe some color, position, those kind of things. And then on update, what you would do is you'd update the particle. There'd be the update cycle. And then there's a quad output of something that you're going to be presenting, and you can actually input that with a texture, and the quad can be something that is billboarded so that you can see it. So it's very interesting the way they do it, and the special effects are awesome, things that you can kind of pull off with Vfx Graph. So take a look at that. I encourage you to look at this kind of stuff. It's something that's more modern than just using plain old particle systems. The other thing that, in terms of how you get to that, you can open the Vfx Graph window by different means. One of them is this window, Visual Effects and Vfx Graph. And how it looks, it's broken up like this. You're going to see a toolbar. This is the red part, where you can do things like click the compile button, and the compile button will actually update the effect that you see in the workspace after you've connected several different kinds of nodes. When you connect nodes, the green area is your workspace, the blue area is your blackboard, and the purple area is the game object that you're affecting. So this is the actual target visual effect game object that you're going into. So it's kind of interesting the way it works. So that's what I wanted to introduce to you today, Vfx Graph. What I've also done with you on Blackboard, Ubisoft Next, is I've given you a couple of links, and one of them is a Unity Vfx Samples, where you can download something that is several samples that they've given you. So from an assets perspective, they're using the HDRP 2019.3 as an update. We can definitely download this and try it out. This is something we can do, and they have several samples, a bonfire, butterflies, and a bunch of stuff we can look at, which we'll do in a second. So that's one thing that I've given you, and I've also given you a couple of other links. One of them is shader tutorials. shader tutorials is how to create shaders for different kinds of things. So how to do basics, how to do movements, how to do object management, and so on. And it talks about everything in terms of using the shader pipeline, the built-in rendering pipeline, to create different shader effects. So this is something that you want to look at, again, if you're interested in graphics. And finally, there's a great YouTube site, I would say, YouTube channel. I can't really show I have to turn it off in a second, or else I'm going to get in trouble. But these guys, this guy here, Gabriel Aguilar, this dude here, he is pretty awesome in terms of the stuff that he puts together for visual effects. So yeah, I'm actually having a channel that's like pointing to another channel right now, but it is the way it is. This guy's really good. He's very detailed in terms of creating different visual effects. He talks about how to put that together, everything from magic portals to visual effects for weapons, to a bunch of stuff that you can, if you follow along with his tutorial, you can create various different effects for your game, and it'll really make your game look awesome. Like in terms of like, wow, this is a AAA game. You don't have to download stuff necessarily from the asset store. You can create little effects yourself, and in the process, you can have a lot of fun by just following along and trying some stuff out. So I highly encourage you to take a look at this stuff when you have a chance. He also does other things with Blender. So great little tutorials from Blender in terms of creation, like low poly rocks and a bunch of other stuff that he kind of comes up with from an environmental perspective. So great work. And again, I highly recommend taking a look at this stuff. It's pretty awesome. So that's something that you may want to look at. All right, so before we move on, let's download this Vfx Graph samples and see if we can launch it. Now, this uses 2019 415F1. I may have a slightly different version than this, and it also uses the HDRP pipeline. So we'll see. We might have some funky effects. Let's see what happens if we can get this done. So I'm going to download this. And I encourage you to try the same thing. I know this is not really what we do in our lecture, but I think it's neat to look at. And I think you can get a lot out of it. So in the meantime, while this is downloading, and it's going to take a bit of time to do, just not too long, but just a bit, I wanted to ask you guys if anyone's willing to offer up how you feel the project is going at this point. Are you guys satisfied with the pace? Next week it's going to be interesting. We're going to do Mixamo, but and you're going to do organic modeling. But chances are, if you're doing something with an organic model, then you've already done it. All right, at this point. Next week I'm just going to add. If you've never had organic models in your project, we'll talk about how to animate them and how to add them in, and how to use different animation states with organic models with some kind of armature, all right, which is kind of cool. But anyone want to offer up, any producer out there want to talk about their project? Is everything okay? Are we okay with everything? Because this one of the things we're doing in this little section, this little time that we're together for the lecture period, is just giving a bit of a project update to make sure you guys are good. How are you feeling about that? Anyone want to offer up their thoughts? I can pick people. I was going to ask you.
Yeah, I feel like it's going well. In retrospect, I think that it probably would have behooved us to be more cognizant of the fact that we were going to be porting over to mobile, like just for like small things. I think there's going to be some like many very small refactors. Rather than like one huge refactor of input, because I know that Blair, who's our lead software engineer on this, did think about the porting over when he was writing the input at least. But yeah, I think for if I were to do this again in future, then I would probably remind my team early and often that this is just like kind of prototype and we are porting it over. So it would be nice to have kind of components written that could be moved over with very little tweaking to them. But I feel pretty good. There's a lot of deliverables happening where it's like another 10-minute video, another 10-minute video. Now make another 10-minute video.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm like, I kind of wish I could spend like the time I do preparing those videos, like doing other stuff. But I understand why we have so many to like encourage us to have short sprints.
Yeah.
So I get it, but generally I feel like it's going well. I just like as always when we get to the end of a project, I wish I had thought about some things more at the beginning of the project.
That's good. Are you gonna just as an aside, are you gonna compete for the Ubisoft Challenge this weekend?
No, I have a job and I don't need a Ubisoft internship anymore. I'm done. I'm done with this. So happy.
Okay, great. Thank you for the feedback. Anyone else? I know that there are other people that are working on their projects. I'm just looking up Unity. So does anyone else want to offer any kind of, anyone, even if you're not the producer, any feedback or thoughts around how your project is going? One more person. Come on. I just need one more person to talk to me about that. I can ask. Nabil, here. I know. I'll pick people because I know you're the producer. Talk to me about your creative project and how crazy it is. Salak says he's afraid to get more bugs when switching to mobile. I know there's a lot of bugs, and
here I can actually weigh in on the Nabil and my. Oh, sorry, I was muted. No worries. Do you want to go, Nabil, or okay? No, go for it. Go for it. All right. Yeah, I think ours is turning out to be. It looks like it's going to be really fun. Russell just got the infinite generation going, so like loading and unloading chunks, and having it be just like infinitely be able to walk through all the chunks. I mean, pseudo infinite. I mean, the limit to the Perlin texture, but like it's like the Minecraft Deadlands level of infinite.
Cool.
Yeah. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be really fun. I think we're okay in terms of porting over to mobile because our controls are really simple. And like building up our towers and walking around, it should just all be with taps on the screen pretty simply.
Okay, that's what I was asking because I wanted to make sure that I know that Kat's not the only one that's going to experience inputs when it comes to mobile, right? Because you know the plan is let's get it going, let's find the fun. Okay, now let's translate so it works. It's just as fun, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that I want to.
For our project, the biggest worry that we have is performance, because right now, like the way we're loading and generating the field is when we go, like when we load and unload. So we're worried about how that's going to be when we get onto mobile.
Yeah, and are you saying like from just the generating the meshes and the textures, or
like when you walk between the chunk boundaries, they're stitching. So it's like it's spawning in all.
100% certain that's what's causing it, because the other thing that's happening is it has to recalculate the NAS meshes because those chunks didn't exist.
Right.
Yeah.
And currently the way it's doing it is it's recalculating all the NAS meshes that are
Did it break my mic, or can you still hear? NVIDIA is using. There we go. That's it. NVIDIA is using the same conversion. There we go. You done? it's using the same, my GPU is being taxed on different ways. And so I'm broadcasting, I'm talking through NVIDIA. You've got it all happening, right? And I'm using, USB stuff, not a, it's all being used at the same time. So I'm probably going to get a bit of lag that you're going to hear now for a second. But this is all just me importing stuff. So hopefully after this will be okay. Can you guys hear me okay now?
Yeah, it's
all right.
working good now.
All right. So what I was saying was I'm happy that with the insights. I think I always think about, the looking at mobile as like older machines. Back in the day, we had limitations when it came to memory and performance and all that kind of stuff. And then as hardware improved, those things weren't as much of a consideration on a PC. So I'm saying it's like, okay, so I have lots of memory, I have lots of space, I don't have to worry about those things as much. And now back to mobile, we have to worry about it again, right? So that's the challenge for you guys. And I think working with constraints, and this is always something I think about when I work with constraints, I always learn a lot, because that means that I have to limit myself to what I can produce, as opposed to having no limits. No limits are bad, because in some ways you spoil yourself. You're just like, well, I can use whatever I want. I can use some kind of post-processing effect or a particle effect or whatever. And then you go on mobile and you're like, wait, no, it doesn't work. And if you try it on VR, it's like, wait, no, it doesn't work, right? So those are the things that are really good learning from this one. So that's good. And then and especially with you guys, you're doing procedural generation and you're trying to chunk a world together, so to speak. Some of the things that you can do from a optimization perspective is, again, just like you're using chunks. And I guess, Russ, what you're doing is are you instantiating and destroying when you're creating stuff, or are you not rendering?
No, I instantiate and then I disable them immediately. So once they're instantiated, they're there.
Okay.
But the nav mesh is being recalculated on everything, so it slows down when it should only be calculated on like 3 at most.
Okay. All right. So thank you for that feedback. Let's see if this is going to work. So like we said before, we have our basic scene. So if we run our basic scene, that's the first thing. We should get nothing like this, right? But one of the things this project is supposed to do is you're supposed to have a bunch of samples. So everything from, so we want to go with our sample loader. Let's see if we can get this going. That's the icon for Unity. That's what that's running with. Just want to make sure I got everything here. And prefabs. So yeah, my system is chugging. Sorry guys, it's still doing something behind the scenes. Let's go with samples. All right, come on. And bonfire. There we go. Yeah, so I think that's pretty good, right? And I know that when I play things like Valheim, this looks just like it. I mean, even though it's low, very low poly and stuff in terms of the way it works. I mean, take a look at that, how nice that looks for bonfire, right? So that's an example of just using a Vfx graph for doing that. So let's see what that looks like. So the asset looks like this, all right? Like we said, it literally is a node, kind of a node network, right? And you can see here that there are several different networks that are connected together. So you're spawning different kinds of particle effects, and they actually can name them. You can actually create a section. So this is the flame. These are the embers, and I'm sure this is the smoke. So there's your smoke effect. So the great thing about using Vfx Graph is you can grab just the smoke effect, and you can add this smoke effect to other Vfx graphs by just following the same settings that you see here. So that's pretty cool in terms of the way it works. So, and then how it links together is, again, what you have is some kind of linear interpolation where you connect the velocity of your update in your update particle to and you multiply the velocity of your current particle for smoke so that it kind of works together. It's kind of neat. So that is what a VFX graph would look like. And you can create things like properties that are here that can appear here. And this is kind of the exact same way that you see it in other visual languages. So that's that one. Again, it's just a bit of a tour. I wanted to kind of do this because it takes long to create a VFX anything. So this, it says, let's see what this looks like. That's radar. Let's try that out. And hopefully you guys can see that, right? There we go. Not sure if that's coming in clearly or if it's chugging. That might look bad for you guys in the when through Zoom. So what I'll do is on the Zoom side, I'm just going to optimize for video clip here. Just for a second, you're going to see this. The words are going to be bad, but at least you may see a better performance when it comes to the animation. You tell me, is that better or is that worse?
The resolution quality is a bit.
But maybe is the animation better or worse? Animation smoother. Okay. I know limitations with Zoom. So
it's really nice on the local.
On yourself, for yourself, I mean, when you're trying it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's like super nice when it comes to for what you can do. And again, I mean, the effects aren't bad. Let's look at some other ones. Let's look at a portal. So here's a portal example, right? Again, this is using HDRP. So HDRP and mobile, you know, not too crazy. So this is a bit of a bigger network, as you can see. A lot of it, when it comes down to it, and the great thing about VFX Graph, if the people are nice, and I mean that like as in if they're a good programmer and conscientious, they're going to do things like label stuff. Like here's your source torus, and then as you go through your particle to center vector and the world, how you angle your torus, they actually broke it down for you. And each one of these things do a small little effect on the entire thing, right? So then, and they all link together, and finally there's a composition, compose initial brightness, and then it passes into the color node, and finally you get some kind of effect. Let's see what that looks like. And maybe we can take that away. Yeah. That's the same one. Hold on a second. I meant to go to this one. There you go. That almost looks like the Doctor Strange portal, right? So that's pretty cool. So that's awesome. I really like what they're doing there. And you see that there's a texture that they're looking at. And as you go through the texture, you get that really weird warpy effect that happens on the texture behind the portal. So kind of cool. Again, really interesting stuff that you can kind of pull off with this stuff. We'll do a couple more and that'll be it for today. Right, so let's look at volumetric. Volumetric anything is really interesting, I always find. So it's kind of like a volumetric, oh, that's really neat, right? Again, all done through nodes. So VFX nodes. So very, very interesting the way you can do stuff. So again, take a look. I highly encourage you guys to look and see what makes sense for you to put together. Don't just add a visual effect just for the visual effect's sake. Put it in place where it makes sense. So if you need fire or you need a really cool looking scene or even lighting, it really does a great job to improve what Unity can do over the standard particle system. All right, so that's your VFX graph. And VFX graph has been used for things like great little 3D explosions. And there's a lot of stuff. Again, I encourage you to look at that website that I gave you guys, where you can kind of put things together. There's your voxel terrain. Let's see what what it does for us. This is for you because you guys are doing all that stuff. There we go. So that's kind of really cool. And let's see if I can add input height and maybe some elevation, as well as the water level. There we go. So that's kind of cool. Oh yeah, and you can drag it around so that where the center of this thing is to create that that terrain. That's really nice. So take a look. I mean, there's some great examples of this here. And so VFX Graph isn't just for, you used it to make a cartoony proof animation one time. Yeah, I think it's really great to look at. I just wanted to look at that voxel terrain VFX Graph and see how crazy the network is. And actually, it's not so bad. I mean, compared to what we've seen already, it looks like there's one emitter, right? This is what this is. And you have a bunch of positions that are being displaced. So each of the voxels is being created, and it's just a set of particles. And here's your elevation. So you've got these are the things, the blend speed, the input height map, as well as the height. And these things here provide you with inputs for your game object. So the height field color map, the water elevation and elevation, these are all things that are exposed in the editor. So kind of really cool. Okay, guys, so that is just a tour of VFX Graph. I think these are great examples for you to take a look at. That's it for me and my.
Also really cool.
What was that?
The spaceship one is really cool.
Okay, we'll do that one since you're saying it.
Yeah. I never realized that those were made as particle effects.
Oh yeah. All right, that's great. Some nice randomization.
Like we see those in movies or whatever.
Yeah.
I never realized it was like a particle effect that you could do.
It's cool. Yeah. It's neat. So it's all voxels. That's what you're looking at here. That's neat. So like a holographic table of some kind. Yeah, neat. And that's all in real time. And so if you look at the scene itself, the scene is pretty simple, right? This is where actually the work is happening, but the scene is actually some kind of, 3D scene that's inside of Unity, and you've got your holographic table right in there. So kind of cool, right? And again, too bad we can turn the table, but you can't really. There's no fly controls or anything like that. It's just, that's all I can do right now. But that's pretty cool, man. All right. So that is VFX Graph. I just wanted to give you guys, like I said, a tour of this. I think it's pretty cool, and you can make your game really pop and look like it's a AAA game in 3D. We're talking about 3D, and I'm not sure if you guys have talked about that with your professor from your other course, the engines course that you're taking. So this is what I wanted to talk about with you guys. So yeah, that'd be pretty awesome. All right, let's stop this insanity and we'll go back to what we're doing. So again, some reminders. Okay, I just wanted to remind you of where we're sitting. So we're sitting today at week 10. We don't have a lot of time left. It feels like we have a pile of time. Okay, and it always does. I find that we're like, oh yeah, we have so much time left. We have like 5 weeks left. 5 weeks, guys, is nothing to get 1, 2, 3 releases done. So little quick iterations, just like Kat said earlier, right? And these iterations are there just to get you guys to improve the product just a little bit, marching forward just a bit. And that's what this whole plan was supposed to be. So it's a little bit more curated the way we're doing stuff, right? So, but at the same time, what it does is it does put you in a bit of a box because I'm asking for stuff on a regular basis, right? For you guys. And it's really more for you to continually on the ball, to progress with your project. I find that if you don't do any kind of progress reports like this at all over the course of project development, then things tend to lag until you have to do it. So that's kind of a negative, right? So hopefully this will be a chance for you to, again, learning experience for everybody and a chance to put things out. But keep in mind these deliverables. One of the things that people have a challenge with is the number of individual deliverables, as well as people still aren't handing in their weekly reports. People still aren't handing in their peer reviews. Again, this will have an impact on you at the end of the course when all of these little things add up to give you an individual mark over the group mark that you're getting. Okay, so group activity, I think you guys are all doing well. On the downside, there's some of you who are just not following up with the weekly stuff that you need to put together. So please don't forget to do that. Alpha release wise, we're good. I'm really looking forward to seeing your final presentations on the week. And so you can see that there are 4 different releases, major releases, and where a lot of your marks are coming from, because these releases here, the alpha, beta, final, and final presentations, they're all worth like 10% or more. So you can see that this is worth quite a bit of marks. And this is how it all comes together at the end anyway. Okay, so that was my project update and the VFX Graph tour. That's it for me for this week for the lecture part. During lab, we're going to be talking about saving and loading and how to do that properly with scriptable objects and mobile. So please look forward to that video, and I'll be putting that out in about 20 minutes or so. All right, so other than that, anyone have any questions? All right, guys, thank you so much. I'll stop producing this video, and I'll see the rest.